Welcome everyone to the Elite Breeders Club. Today we're sitting here with Axie Oasis and Jaxie Wick, and we're going to talk about scaling your Axie Infinity business. So Axie Oasis is a PvP player, 2200 plus MMR, and a scholar manager and breeder as well. Jaxie Wick is a large-scale breeder and scholar manager in Axie Infinity, and Jaxie is actually scaled to over 850 scholars and climbing. So we've got a couple of really great perspectives on the spectrum of the business of Axie Infinity, and so we're going to jump in and talk about that here today. So let's get into it.
Awesome. Yeah. So thanks for that, DJ. Yeah. Well, just sticking with the topic of scaling, Jaxie, like my background, like DJ said, PvP player, loved the game, got into it, had a whole host of different builds, would buy things on a one-off basis that you see kind of in the arena as you're going through, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And as I was doing that, I got to a point where I really wanted to, do more. I had, not flip some Axies, because you're buying stuff and then selling it, a week later or whatever, after you're done using it, or you want to try something else and you're swapping in, new things into the team, into the hopper to try out. But as I kind of expanded and started my YouTube channel, I really wanted to take on scholars, which is when I started breeding. And that's when I really thought about, how do I economically scale what I'm trying to do? And for me, I started, watching YouTube videos on breeding and ABCD farms and ABC breeding styles. And I really just kind of stumbled into it, like what I thought the best way to, what was the best way to do it. And, for me, I started, with a double aqua team. So I bought four plants, four aquas and four midline aquas, and then four backline aquas. Go through pretty standard 4 or 5 breeds on each of them, depending on genes and whatever the cost of SLP, AXS was, at the time, whatever the, best kind of break even was going to be. Got things in the hopper. If I decided that I wanted to keep something, I would, but mostly sold off only a few of the offspring that I wasn't going to be using, either for my future breeds as future breeders. And then I just kind of kept those, those top 4 Axies with high breeds. And, that got me to 4 teams there. And I probably had, another couple of Axies kind of kicking around. And, I basically said, I got all these assets that people really want to use, and how do I get them into people's hands and using them? So I'm at a point now where I just loaded my first 6 scholar accounts, and am kind of set where I am now, but thinking about, how to go, to the next level, and, what you would be doing. And, I'd love to, just hear your comments on that, but that's kind of where I'm at now. And just thinking about, like, how to go from, I went from 0 to, I went from 0 to 4 because I wanted to get into it, or set 0 to 6. But now, how do you think about going, like, systematically into, a large number of scholars?
Yeah, great question. All right. So as far as systematically growing your scholar teams at scale, just for, I guess, business 101, right? So you want to have a decentralized business model. So the biggest issue with new business owners is you have to wear multiple hats, right? And you Wade, you want to be a player, but you also want to run the scholarship. So it's all about dividing your time, right? So in the beginning stages, so as a centralized business as an example, so if this is you right here, I'm just gonna put like AO for Axie Oasis, right? So if you think of it this way, you have to spend time like playing, your account with PvP and such, right? But when you want to start your own scholarship here,
all good. We get the gist of that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put scholarship. So if you're gonna start your own scholarship here, this diagram becomes totally different. So it'll end up evolving into something like this, where so you're playing PvP and you have how many scholars right now?
6. I have 6.
So the thing is, think of these as touch points, and you're gonna have 6 touch points suddenly added. So these are like issues that'll pop up throughout the week, throughout the day. And as you scale up, the biggest issue for people who want to play the game as well, but also run scholarships, is trying to manage more than like 20 people online is a big challenge in itself. If it's because you assume you have like kids, right? Or do you have family? Or
I don't. I have no dog. I have a girlfriend. Okay. That's the most serious commitment I have in my life.
Right. Well, for most people who they might have kids, right? I mean, it becomes cumbersome. So when you want to scale up, so this is what we call like a centralized, operating system, right? You want to be decentralized, and that's when you want to start looking into hiring team leaders or managers to help you manage the whole operation. So it'll end up looking something like this. So for me right now, the way I have it set up is, so I'm like here, I actually have 6 managers right now. So I'm gonna put 6. So there's like 6 touch points. It's more like 3 actually, because 2 of the managers work together, and then there's one where 3 of them work together as well. So it's more like 3 different touch points, right? And then each manager has their own team leaders, and team leaders manage anywhere from like 20 to 50 scholars, right? So let's just say like this person has 4, and then this group here has like 3, and then these 2 here have, let's just say like 3 or 4 as well, right? So I'm only talking to the managers basically, right? So it's like 3, right? And they're working it out with their own team leaders, and then team leaders will have like, I'll just put 20 plus. So this is kind of how we scale up. And this
is so smart. I mean, this is a great visual to think about. You
get the point, right? But
it's
imagine
good old-fashioned org chart.
Yeah. So this is how I pretty much everything set up. And then I also have like a full-time employee that helps me. And then I guess it's kind of like this or something, right? But it kind of goes over me, right? So my point is, for me to keep scaling this up, we just have to simply add more team leaders. And team leaders are the ones that are usually working with scholars in depth. So the way I have the whole organization set up, and let me go ahead and clear the drawing, is so team leaders usually work with groups of anywhere from 20 to 50 scholars. I have Zoom as well. So for my managers, when it comes to recruiting, so we don't actually bring scholars on through Discord as much. If we do, we'll try to heavily screen them, kind of like have them fill out an application. But recently what we've been doing is we've been implementing like video lessons as well as live trainings. So one of my managers in Cebu right now, the way he does it is we have everything set up. He does everything on Zoom right now because he'll get anywhere from 150 to 200 like interested applicants, right? So these are like, let's just call them potential scholars, right?
Yeah.
And he'll usually drill them down for up to like 2 weeks. And for those 2 weeks, he'll actually play like on the account that I gave him with different builds, and people have to show up, right? So if people show up, he'll make notes of who shows up every session. And it'll be like maybe a video every day, like for literally 2 weeks. And sometimes, some people drop out, some people add on. And the Zoom is all set up on Discord. So they have to join the Discord channel first, I believe. And then from Discord, then they can register for like the Zoom training and such, right? Sometimes he'll do some of the trainings on Discord, but nowadays he's been migrating everything to Zoom. So for those 2 weeks, he'll show gameplay, explain to them how this game works, like how you go ahead and, play PvE, like how you make SLP. And now with the new announcement for Ronin, right, it's going to be a lot easier to do Ronin to Ronin transactions now, so that way scholars don't have to pay huge gas fees. So we also cover like payment, like this is how you get paid. You have to set up Ronin, you have to set up Binance, you have to do all this KYC stuff. By the end of it's usually like let's say 1 to 2 weeks, right? At the end of the sessions and such, what'll happen is he calls them and he organizes them into waves. That's what he calls them. So every wave has like 100 like scholars that are finally vetted. So at the end, if they stick around, he'll organize them into waves, and then from the waves, then they'll start getting their teams. So he'll assign them the teams for them to play, and then he'll also assign them a team leader to work with. So usually each team leader, I think right now for him, they handle up to 50 scholars, and then team leaders usually so right now they're stuck in 20 energy. We're trying to get them to 40 because my other team leaders with the other managers that I have, they usually have 40 energy accounts, but team leaders basically have 40 energy accounts, and they get a small percentage of all the scholars that they manage and make sure the average, they hit their averages. So far with this whole process, so this is what my Cebu manager does. I think our average SLP per scholar, even during the first week, is relatively, it's 130, 140, between grinding on PvE and playing on PvP, right? But we've had scholars hit 2K MMR within 2 weeks of playing, joining, with the support.
Do you attribute that to the training process, Jaxie?
Yeah, I believe so, because we're comparing this to my South American group. So we have about 150 scholars in South America right now, and their averages have been the lowest compared to the one in Cebu. So I have another manager in San Carlos, and between San Carlos and Cebu is ranked slightly higher. It's an extra 15, 20 plus SLP average, across the board per scholar. It's slightly higher, right? But I think the biggest difference when I noticed is with the South American people that I have, they are implementing training, but recently they've had an influx of potential scholars, so they haven't been up on point with the training. So some of the scholars we've actually had to replace because they just weren't that great, or they just weren't as passionate. But I think the training side really helps because, and I really recommend for people running scholarship programs, you do want to have people that can help you train scholars, get them to play better, because at the end of the day, with the new PvP structure, you have to have a higher MMR to make a lot more SLP, right? So I think right now with the Cebu manager, with this whole process we have, I think we have 20 scholars now out of 100 and out of 200 scholars that are over 1900 MMR, and we have 5 or 6 that hit over 2K, which is still pretty good though, because the average is going up. You know how hard it is for brand new people to get to even 1600 MMR, right? But they're able to scale through pretty fast because of the amount of training it provides. And team leaders will also do trainings with scholars as well. So the importance of the team leader really is, so the managers are the ones that are bringing in the scholars, giving them the general orientation, helping them understand the gameplay, how teams work. And he'll also ask them questions like energy tracking. That's actually a big thing. I still struggle with energy tracking because I don't play the game a lot like you, Wade, but for the 2 weeks or so, he'll ask questions while he's playing, oh, by the way, how much energy does he have right now, or how many cards is he holding, or what do you think he's going to do? So he asks these questions when he's playing the game to the scholars, and make note of those that answer correctly, right? And
so sorry, that's during the Zoom. So that's during the 2 weeks.
Yeah,
got it. So the manager, and is the manager who's putting out the application? So the 150, the 200, the manager.
So the manager's actually, the manager which is great, actually used to run a gaming club in Cebu, so he knows a lot of gamers who want to play the game. Gotcha. What we do is we do everything through referral basis right now. So team leaders and players can refer people who'd want to join the scholarship, right? But the way it's set up is we do set it up as if it's a real business, right? Because if you look at other scholarships right now and people who are struggling in a way, I don't really know most people that actually provide a lot of training, like hands-on training for scholars, right? And I think that's a really big importance, especially with the PvP change. You do have to have scholars that can play, but you can't really expect to bring on scholars and assume that they can play from the get-go, right? So
Yeah, I'm actually
Right.
I'm just learning that, not to, because I mean I'm every step of this process here, and I'm just actually learning that, where it's okay, I just did this, and like, do you understand like why this might be better? Because I've got, beast damage on this backliner, and I want you to test it out and see if it's better than, just like a pure aqua. And they're like, beast damage does more damage to the plant tank, and I was like, whoa, like, I talked to you, I vetted you, I think that you're, someone that I want to work with and partner with, but I just skimmed over the entire part of, wow, like there's a learning curve to get to, where, like you said, even getting into, you start earning 12 SLP at like 1500 to 1600 MMR a win, so that's definitely a key like hurdle rate.
That's where scholarship can really make a difference. If the average scholar is at like 15, 1600, that makes a huge difference to having a lot of scholars at like 12, 13, like that's a big difference. But I really recommend, like, if you're planning on bringing on like 50 scholars or 30 scholars at once, I would consider doing a 1-week orientation at least, and just doing live plays, having them show up, put in the time. I mean, I think even Bryson, because I saw in a couple of his YouTube videos, like he has the Twitch tracker, right, where he'll track people showing up, asking questions, putting in time, and then he'll add them to his scholarship, right? It's kind of like the same thing, and I think this is a really important thing that a lot of people skip out on. But this is why having team leaders or people that can help train them is great, because if you are also trying to do other things, like you want to do more YouTube, you want to do more stuff on Discord for your community, you want to do more, you might want to spend more time with your family as well. Like, it's really hard to do that unless you have all these like systems set up, right? So I do recommend for people wanting to start scholarships and expanding, like, just consider, like, if you're adding 1 or 2 people a week, then it's different. Like, you can probably do a little bit more hands-on training per person. But if you're trying to bring on like 10 plus people every week or every 2 weeks, you might want to consider, like, before, so like an example is if you're planning on adding 10 new teams like every 2 weeks, then a week before you start making the teams, like, consider doing orientation, have scholars understand like energy advantage, card advantage, have them understand how to like know what to expect from other players, and I your average for your scholars should be up significantly more when they start playing, versus just handing them the account and expecting them to know everything, right? Like, I don't think that works really well. And also having this level of investment towards your players do help with retention, in a way. I also one of the things we make sure is we do ask scholars. I mean, it's not that I don't want scholars to start their own scholarships. I do encourage scholars to start their own scholarships, if they want to down the line. But one of the things I've learned is, if you want to bring on scholars that are super ambitious, then you can consider, like, if they make really good progression, you can also let them know, hey, like, we have advancements in place. Because one of the issues I've had with one of the scholars recently was in my South American group, one of the scholars we brought on board, we gave him a solid meta team with backline Terminator, Dual Blade Beast, and then Yam Clan, and he hit 2100 MMR in like 2 weeks, right? But what happened was we found out, because the friend of mine, the same friend I said that, started his own scholarship, and he has it's about the same number of scholars as I do right now. That same scholar actually went and hit him up for a scholarship. And I think the issue was, well, we told our scholars, like, listen, we're going to start making 40 energy account for players who hit like 2k MMR. So we do have advancements where if you hit like 2k MMR for sure, you're going to get 40 energy. But it takes time for us to get enough fillers, and we also have to work our way from top down, because we have scholars that have MMRs at 2300 right now too. So we go down from priority, right? But basically, like, one of the scholars was like super impatient and then wanted to like get another scholarship from someone else, so we ended up having to kick him out. But I think providing a clear path for advancement helps for like long-term, like retaining talent, right? So if scholars hit 2K MMR, great. Like how many scholars do you have that hit 2K MMR? It might be like 10% or 15% of your scholarship or something, right? Maybe more. But if you have advancements in place for them, like, you know, and they're really good people, like it's a win-win for both parties, because they'll help train up your next round of scholars, and they'll also be the ones to help do the whole hands-on process with scholars as well. So, but yeah, I definitely recommend putting some time and like investment towards making sure scholars that you bring on board are capable of like playing, you know, with the tools you give them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just really solid business principles. You know, you're bringing people onto a semi-skilled or skilled position, and you know, in order for people to perform at their roles, they need to have training. You know, it's absolutely critical. And then the benefit is you get them up to speed faster, and you have less people washing out, etc.
I mean, think of it this way: like people watching right now that are playing, like, could you hit 2K MMR in like 10 days? You know, like that's, or even like 1500 MMR, 1600 might be a challenge for people who don't understand, who are brand new. But because everyone that we bring on board understands the whole fundamentals of the game from the get-go, they're able to scale to 1600 MMR in like 3 days, 5 days, you know, like, right. And that makes a huge difference versus trying to bring on 100 scholars or 50 scholars, but they're all like 1200 to 1500, like various ranges, right? So so the way I look at it is just trying to bring the whole average up. The other thing is we also do prize pools. So right now I'm contributing about we're raising it up to about $3,500, but basically every 2 weeks, like, so we pay out every 15th and 29th to 30th, usually like 14 to 15, 20 to 30th. And we offer first place prize is actually $500 for scholars. So whoever has the highest average for the 2-week period for SLP gets $500. Then we work our way down to like 350, 250, and then it's like 250 for like the next 10. We're thinking of just making more slots now instead of like giving like 500 from the get-go for most people. But yeah, I mean, I've had scholars that are averaging like 220 a day for like 2 weeks, you know, because we offer like prize pool incentives and make it clear, like, you know, if you want to, you know, if you play well, you'll do well. I think some people ask me about like, well, what if like scholars have different builds? You know, if scholars can actually hit like the average peak MMR with their build, like we'll also have them try different builds, you know, like, so we'll actually be able to swap them out with something that's more recent or more meta, right? So we make it very clear in our scholarship, like if you play really well, like we'll let you test other builds out, we'll give you more energy. Like we have advancements for team leaders. We're also building a leaderboard team right now, so we can get more scholars up to like, we're trying to get to the top 1,000 and have a lot of scholars hit it. I think one of them is at like 1,700 right now. So, you know, I think having like incentives and opportunities for people will also have them want to stick around more, and you know, which can help, you know, but yeah, that's pretty much the whole setup we have for training scholars and bringing them on.
How do you find your top level people, the 3 people that are the connections directly to you? How do you go about finding?
The first one I actually was when I first started Axie Infinity, and I was looking for scholars. I was going through applications on Discord at the time, but one of them just stuck out really well because I've been because you know I've hired VAs from the Philippines before for my other businesses, and one of them just stuck out because you know how you get all these copy paste applications, and it's like, man, like you really want people to put a little bit of effort, you know, but one of them really stuck out. So I ended up talking to him, and we did like a really lengthy interview, and I had him play on an account that I set up, and he seemed to understand things from the get-go. And I explained to him, like, I do want to expand my scholarship, but I think you know, being able to bring people on would be huge. And you know, like with most scholars, like they have people that they know who need a scholarship, but it's just so hard for them to get one, right? So I told him, like, if you want to bring, you know, refer people and bring them on board, like I'll take him on. And then he started taking more of a managerial position, where because he was actually helping the new scholars he brought on board like play better and such. And I mean, he was talented from the get-go in that sense. So then I talked to him about asking him, like, do you want to help run this with me? The other two people are actually people that I knew. So my South American one is actually a business partner of mine from 2019 and 2020, where we like ran a business together. So he's from Peru, and we talked about how, because right now in Venezuela, the currency is being devalued like crazy. Peru, Colombia, Brazil have, like the US dollar there is like super strong, right? So I asked him, like, why don't we try setting up a scholarship there and see how it goes? And so I had him run that. And then my Cebu one was actually from so one of my friends from because I run a marketing agency, so like she also runs one too. She was actually running a VA training program, and her COO for that was from Cebu, and he has experience like managing Amazon. Like he was actually worked at an Amazon warehouse and like managed the whole like department or something. So he had a lot of experience training people, right? And we got on a call because so the friend of mine wanted to start a scholarship program as well. So we got on a call. She ended up not going with it, but I really liked the guy. So we ended up, and he really wanted to play Axie Infinity as well. So because he has experience training people, like that was a huge benefit. So I ended up just telling him, like, look, I might want to start another scholarship program with you, because I need someone to help manage it. And he's like, yeah. And also he actually happened to run a gaming club as well. So that was a huge value because he knows how to find gamers, people that can actually play video games, right? So I ended up having him start off, and then he brought on board 50 people. But the 50 people that he brought on board were by far the best I've seen out of, like, I think at the time we were at like 500 scholars. Those 50 people in the first week, their averages were like off the charts from what I've seen. Because normally, how you see scholars grind and work their way up, and then he basically helped refine the whole process and the whole Zoom stuff. Like he ended up structuring that for me. So that's pretty much how like we ended up going from there. But because he has such a huge influence with like gamers, and he knows where to find them, and like the average for the Cebu stuff has been like nuts compared to like the other two groups that we have. So yeah, so it was just crazy because the average was like so high for like entry level players, and the fact that they were all getting to like 1800 MMR in like a week, just playing. I was just like, wow. And so that's pretty much how I found the people to help me run this basically. And yeah.
No, it's pretty impressive. Thinking about the different layers, I think that's really smart, thinking about the different spokes. And as you said, you can only have so many touch points, and you can only manage so many people, and you can only see so much going through. And yeah, as a PvP player, I mean, I was telling my scholars when I was interviewing kind of the last of them over the past couple of days, and I'm like, I'm exhausted, dude. Like I was up until 2 a.m. grinding, playing the game because I was, trying to get up into, higher levels of MMR because I haven't been putting as much time in from a PvP standpoint. I was like fluttering around, 2000 MMR, and I'm like, I need to, log some games and like get up there. So I broke 2200 the other night, and then I also was like, okay, now I got to go deal with creating the accounts. I mean, you go down every single level. It's like I got to deal with the emails, and then I got to deal with the Ronin wallets, and I got to deal with making sure it's all on my Trezor properly, and I got to make sure that I am, not getting scammed at this level. I got to get on to a Google Meet or whatever and say, like, can I see you? Like, are you someone that I trust? And, I was talking to my scholars, and, I'm just looking for high energy people who want to learn the game, and I wanted to start kind of there. But, I'm talking to these people after, you work a full day, or like in my case, or
for most people too. Yeah. I mean, they're not gonna have the energy for that,
Yeah, it's like, I was up until 2. I had to wake up. I had a full day. I came back. I started interviewing people. It was like 1 a.m. again the night after, and you're just kind of like, I gotta scan through the output from a Google form to see if I can, discern anything that's like maybe this person is slightly better than someone else. And then I gotta get on a call. Like I'm on the East Coast of the United States, and I'm 12 hours behind people in the Philippines. I have a couple scholars from India. I mean, you're dealing with areas that I'm not even remotely close from a time zone standpoint. So you're just, it's an uphill battle when it comes to all of that. And if you're, like you said, you're creating, I'm creating 6 touch points. And then, like you said, if I'm also the PvP spoke and the breeding spoke, that's 8 before I do anything, in my real, in my real life. So it's definitely, smart to do that. And I've already started talking to people, like as the vetting process went, I'm like, I want you to be like more involved, like please be involved in the Discord. You guys are all going to be able to teach.
I was actually wondering, have you ever thought about like hiring manager scholarship or something? I mean, you guys seem pretty tight.
Yeah, he's been great. I haven't thought about that as a direct.
He seems pretty smart and open.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't thought about it from like a direct opportunity standpoint, working with, one individual person. But when you think about like the value add I would bring at each of these chains, right? Like I like to think I'm a pretty good PvP player. You and I have bounced ideas off on builds. I'm like, yo, like, hey, what do you think of this? And you've shown me some of the stuff you're looking at, which I think is really cool and really unique. And I'm trying to think about my gameplay and where's the meta going and how do we get in front of that, which is super enlightening.
Cool other touch point too, like that's
yeah, exactly. Talk about another touch point, like for sure it's doing that. It's scouring the market is another touch point. Who's shopping for you? If it's not me, so yeah, it's just one of those things where you have to better understand what's going on inside the overall universe. So yeah, it is tough, and I'm starting to figure that out. So definitely the layering is going to be I think really impressive for you, and getting up to that number.
The managers, by the way, get paid really well. So managers, the way I set it up is
sorry, can you just remind me again? I know that you've got your whole structure in your head again, but there's you, Jaxie Wick at the middle or the top.
So I have so at the moment, so I have managers that take managers. Yeah. So I have 6, but some of them are like grouped together, So I have managers and they take 10%. Scholars at the moment take 40. But I also have, keep in mind, we're also trying to beef as many of them up to like 40 and sometimes even 60 energy, so it adds up. Yeah. Then we have team leaders, and this varies depending on the manager. It's up to them, but I also pay for it. But it's anywhere from like 2 to 5% of all the scholars they manage. So if I have a team leader managing 50 scholars, they also, team leaders also play on 40 or 60 energy. We're getting to more 60 now, but they usually play around like 40, right? So team leaders have 40 plus, they get 2 to 5% of all the scholars they manage. Managers take 10% of all the scholars they manage. So they're pretty much like the top, right? I actually had one of my managers ask me, like, when it comes to decisions and such, I pretty much told them, like, look, like, you're bringing people on, you understand them pretty well. So if a scholar, if you and a scholar ever have any issues, like, I got your back, right. Like you're at the top of my list, right? So, but the whole point of the manager really is just to help fulfill the whole like operational side of it, so you can have more time to focus on the business, right? I think a lot of people spend too much time working in the business but not like on it, right? So for me, my responsibilities are, I have to look for new builds, I have to look for like what might be coming up soon, I have to think about like where's everything heading, right? Like I take a look at the Axie world economics a lot, and I just, you know, try to figure things out from there, like see, okay, like where do you think SLP price is going, you know? And then and I also told you that I also raised money, outside money, right? So from people that help launch these scholarships too. So basically, so I also have people that I have to talk to, because, you know, they want to make sure that, you know, this is doing well. So yeah, so that's pretty much, you know, where this is, the way it's set up is, you know, I think scholars do get paid pretty well, because I mean, we give them really solid builds that they can hit 1600, 1800, 2K MMR, right? So we spend a lot of money on builds, like, you know, like the stuff I showed you too, right? Like I'm buying up like 6 of those to breed, you know, and we're trying to create as many solid teams as we can, you know. And last thing is we have leaderboard that's coming up next. So we already have scholars in the leaderboard group, and these are all like the top players that are like crushing it. We give them all the best tools, and we even go out and spend money on Axies that we think that they need, you know. So I'll ask them like, hey, like, so when double talk first became a thing, you know, a double talk bird at the time was like 0.6 ETH, right? I think most people might balk at the idea of buying 4 of those just to give to their scholars. We bought 6 and like bred them and give them to our scholars, you know. So we put a lot of investment into our scholarships. So because of that, like we can't give scholars more than like 40, but you know, but we do have opportunities for them to make more, right? Like with 40 energy accounts, 60 energy accounts, team leaders, leaderboards. I mean, my leaderboard guys always get like top picks, you know? So I let them know like, hey, like, and the managers too, like even I get on calls with the managers, like probably like 5 times a week, you know? And whenever we're on the phone or on like Facebook Messenger, he'll even show me builds that he's thinking about, like the triple lance we're looking into right now. I showed you the like the little branch with like plants, you know, and stuff like that. Like yeah. So like because we've made such an investment on scholars, now we can actually see what, you know, the direction of PvP is heading towards, right? Which I think that's like the real advantage of this is if you're trying to start a breeding farm as well down the line, you want to know what's going to trend before it, like everyone knows it, right? So having all these top players, we get to see builds that most people will not see, but because we have so many scholars playing at like high MMR, you know, the top 5,000 rankings and such, and because they play so frequently, they're able to see what builds pop up frequently, and you know, they feed it back to the manager, and the manager feed it back to me, and then I'll start scouring the marketplace, looking like whether or not, like, is this going to be a big thing? Do I see a future for this build, right? So it kind of comes back, you know. So I think if you make a, you know, so rather trying to look at it from a value extracting position, like, you know, I try to give as much value as we can to scholars, you know. Like today, right now, we're spending like 8 ETH on getting new builds right now, you know, 8 ETH, and then we're trying to like breed them as well, right? So we might spend another 2.5 ETH like breeding, you know. So we do put a big commitment towards our scholars, and we try to make sure that they have the tools. And you know, and the last thing with scholars too is, you know, if scholars are having a tough-ish like time playing, we don't kick them out because they can't play, right? So if they have problems playing, you know, if they're struggling with their MMRs, or they don't understand like how to like play the build, right? I mean, they'll just ask their team leader, like, hey, you know, like, what can I do to play better, you know?
Yeah.
So I think
it seems like a critical role, you know, like having someone who's training someone to reach the max capacity of the asset that you are providing them. Right. So, like you said, you're running the business, you're high level, you're saying, this is the meta, this is the best way to do it. How can I do it at scale? Obviously, all 800 of your scholars can't have double talk birds. Yeah. But
it's usually like, so whenever we have new builds, we'll set aside the majority for actually new scholars coming on board. But if we have old scholars that are doing really well with their MMR builds and they're on the leaderboard, so leaderboard players will always get like first pick. That's the thing. So leaderboard, so if you hit 2K MMR, like you're automatic on my leaderboard team, they get first pick on any new builds we dish out. So if they want to do swaps, like if they want to swap out their current build for something new, they get first pick, you know? So that's the advantages as well, is we're not giving scholars just one build and expecting them to play that for the lifetime of the scholarship. If they hit 2K MMR or even 1800, like they can request to get different builds. Like we'll swap them out, you know, and if they get to the leaderboard group, you know, if they hit 2K MMR, like we'll give them first pick on anything new that we get, right? Which is a big advantage, and it's kind of why most of them usually stick around a lot longer, is because I don't think any other scholarship would be willing to spend the amount of money like we're spending to get these new builds so that they can, you know, continuously play the best that they can, right? So that's like the level I'm operating at. And then if you compare that to like other people, you know, I'm not talking down on other people, but like I think a lot of people running scholarships just think, I'm just gonna buy these 3 Axies, give it to a scholar. Oh, if they can't play it, like I'm just gonna find someone else. But churn rates are a real problem in the long run. Like I you know, so my policy is, if I'm gonna be giving someone a build, but I'm expecting them to perform at a certain level, but it's unrealistic, right? And if I can't hit the same level that I'm expecting someone else to, like I wouldn't give them that build, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I think you should have, right, your values should be aligned, right? So if I'm gonna give a scholar a build and they tell them like, hey, I want you to hit 2K MMR with this, but I mean, they don't have the proper tools to get there, it's kind of like unfair to kind of like think of it that way, right? So yeah, so and for scholars that come on board, I think another issue a lot of people have is like trust issues, right? Because they're thinking like, man, like I'm gonna give this person that I don't know like this $1,000, $2,000 build. Like, I mean, I think as long as you like get to know, you know, the scholars, or you have the managers and you trust the managers know who they're bringing on. We actually do for the referral program we have. So if scholars, you know, if they have people they want to join the scholarship, we actually tell them, if you refer someone and they end up being a bad actor and they get like an account ban, you're also out, like just hands down, you know? So, I mean, ever since we've done that, like out of the 850 plus scholars we have never had an account get banned over like that in any issues, you know? So awesome. It's not, yeah. So, I mean, but I think it's because we also put out strong values, you know, for scholars, and we let them know like there's a lot of room to grow, you know? If you hit 2K MMR, it's not the end of your path. Like we have advancements available, you know, we have team leader positions that are always popping up. We have, you know, new builds that we'll be issuing out, you know, like, so I think, yeah, operating at that level, I think, is a big difference to like what you might expect from like most people.
No, it's really smart. Yeah, I mean, I thought about that for sure when I was, you know, breeding out for my scholars. I'm not gonna, you can't expect someone to do something, especially in a competitive game that's growing with economic incentive there. You know, you play the game, you get better, you earn AXS. I mean, the payouts, you know, in AXS for season 18 are larger than they were ever before. You know, AXS is at 70, what is it, 72, 73? You know, it was 15, 10 when I was in season 17. So, you know, there's people who are going to be attracted to that and people who are going to be competitive to do that. And as the game grows and you get more traction, you will need higher quality, you know, assets to do that. So I think it's just really interesting to think about how you structured it and have been providing things to people, obviously for long-term success, which is great because, you know, you're investing inside of, you know, you're investing in people and you're putting in time. And, you know, I don't want to have to do it. I don't want to have to, pull the plug on someone. I'm like, I went through the apps. I made the decision to call you and contact you and interview you. And if you don't work out, it's tough. I mean, it's the same thing, like a job in the real world. Like you know, it's like if you're hiring someone and you're investing time, you're training them, and you know, there's a huge time lag. Obviously it gets massively accelerated in this game, but you know, even, you know, 2 weeks, because I gotta go, you know, cast my net. I gotta go gather more. I gotta review them, and then I gotta interview, and then, you know, it's
it's a whole different like time commitment, you know. And
absolutely.
I think if you're planning on even going at 10, like I tell people, I mean, once you get to 10 scholars, like you might really want to start thinking about bringing someone else on board, you know, because it's just not.
Well,
I mean, people think like, yeah.
Well, how do you think about the way you sounded like you had partners in areas of the world with networks and really impressive stuff and professional levels of capital and all of that.
Yeah.
Someone like me, younger, good player, has a working knowledge of the game, has got a decent amount of disposable income to be working in this, and I've got this spider web. What I'm basically getting at is I started from kind of the bottom up, like you kind of seemed like from your pyramids, I found managers, team leaders, got down to the scholars. Like I'm the guy and I'm building out the floor. And now how do you,
so I mean, if you're gonna go that route,
how would you go bottom up?
I mean, you just have to bring on someone who can handle the other scholars, you know. I mean, I think hold on.
Yeah, I think that's right. But you hopefully understand what I'm saying is I'm filtering to the bottom level, and then I'm trying to I need to add a tranche, add a spoke on that org chart.
If you have any scholars right now that are doing really well, I mean, I think for like managers, they should be really good players as well, like because they have to be able to teach players. So I mean, do you have any scholars right now? Like what's the highest MMR right now, like one of your scholar has?
I just loaded them there. I haven't actually gone through. Okay. I've not actually gone through a cycle. I started a month ago doing this, put out the app 3 weeks ago, been reviewing them, read everything out.
You don't have to have a manager that's a good player. It's recommended, but I mean, like I was saying with like really well organized, like if you wanted to bring, and if you have a really good relationship with him, I mean, you could bring him on and have him like manage your scholars. And so basically like the manager stuff really is just handling the day-to-day stuff, so if scholars have questions about something, I mean, having a really knowledgeable player helps. But if it's really good with like admin stuff or something, like, I mean, I think he'd be a really good help. Or what you could do is if you have a scholar that's like a really good player, I mean, he could be like the coach or something for all the players you're trying to bring on board.
Right.
You really want someone to have a level of outreach to kind of bring the scholars on board, right? But I mean, you already have 6 scholars. Like what you could do is you could just have your application, right, with the initial 6 you have, and just ask them like, hey, like I'm looking at expanding the scholarship. Do you know any good people who'd want to join? And then they can help pass the form around to help their friends or people that they know who'd bring like the same value. Because now that the scholars you have understand the value that you want to promote, like the value should be aligned with them, and they can in turn help bring people on board who have the same values as you, because they understand what you're looking for, right? So that does help you with the filtering process, because initially when you did your scholarship outreach, I mean, you got like 100 applicants or something like that, right?
Yep. I did the I put out like a video on YouTube basically saying I'm launching that, and what I'm going to be doing is fielding it, reviewing for 2 weeks, then interviewing. And I got I think I probably got like 2,000 views on that video. Probably I've received about 140 applications all in, and I cut that down to
6 or something.
I cut it down to 30 people that I was gonna call. I cut it in half, and I'm like, these are the best. These are worthwhile. And then I'm like, I'm not calling 60 people. That's crazy. Right. So I cut it in half again, and I was like, even 30 is trying.
What you do with the 6 you have is just give them the same form, but just have them do like peer-to-peer, rather, and just ask them like, if you have any people who want to like come on, and then it should help it even further, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, or the alternative is, I mean, like after a cycle, like after a week or 2 with your scholars, I mean, if any of them seem very ambitious in a way, entrepreneurial as well, you can have them be like a team leader, and then they can go out and help bring people on board and handle the hiring process as well, you know? So they'll have like people ready on standby, and they'll just have to wait until you like make an account, right? But yeah.
That makes sense.
So this has been amazing. Jaxie, the organization that you built is, you know, it's frankly, it's incredible. Certainly, you know, it's pretty, going to be pretty unique, you know, within this community. So really, you know, appreciate everything that you shared, and I think you shared a lot of stuff that you know is not really readily out there. So I think people are going to love that. You know, Wade, awesome. You know, love hearing about your journey as well. So as we wrap up here, guys, how can everybody, you know, hear more from you guys? You know, want to give up your socials, your YouTube? Yeah, Jaxie, where can people find you?
My YouTube, I think, is the easiest, and then I have like my Discord links and such on my videos, right? But yeah, YouTube would probably be the easiest for me right now.
Awesome. You're Jaxie Wick on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I think I'm at Axie Oasis on YouTube, and very similar. Very similar. All the links to my Discord and any other way to reach me, Twitter as well, are all you know, embedded in my my channel. But yeah, definitely check out Jaxie.
We'll drop everything in the show notes too here for anybody that's watching, for the links. So those will be down below. So want to thank everybody for joining us. This has been the Elite Breeders Club, and put out some information. You can find us at elitebreeders.club. We're also on Twitter at Axie Elite Breeder, BREEDR. So drop us a follow. We would love that. And we've got a website and a Discord link to that with some great free content, some really cool build guides that we've been tweeting out, and that really high production quality stuff that you know, is really easy to read. And we also run a paid membership club where we've got lots of really amazing tools and resources that we've built to help you build your scholarship programs, find, you know, great ways to find you know, Axies. We provide daily pricing on over 50 different meta builds, and lots of other great tools. So check us out there, and hope to see you around. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this, Jaxie and Axie. It's been great, and we'll see you all later.
Thanks CJ. Thanks Jaxie.